Hello, everyone. Welcome to the lecture of today. It's a tinting and toning with plants. And let me see. So this online lecture will be recorded and it will be uploaded to Filmware Plots Vimeo channel. And if you want to see our previous lecture, you can go to the link. I already placed it in the chat. If you don't see it, I can repost it again. So Photographic Garden, it's a series on online lecture hosted by Filmware Plots. Filmware Plots is an artist-run film lab located in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. And it was founded in 2000 by Esther Ulis here and Jos van Veen. And it's a place for artists, for anyone who wants to work with the analog film to create work. Film work, installation, or performance. And we have most of the facility for 60 millimeter and some for Super 8, some for 35. And we started this Photographic Garden project in June this year. And it's a series of online lecture focused on eco-friendly or environmental conscious questions around analog filmmaking. Just reconsider, can we use different way of developing the film? Can we work the photochemistry, photochemical process differently? And through this research, it's also creating new potential for artistic visual languages. And we have already done 3 lectures in the past. In June, we had alternative image making process by Hannah Fletcher. And in July, we have a silver gelatin light sensitive emotion making by Esther Ulis. And last month, we have reached a Ricardo letter for the developing with a plane-based developer. Today, we're going to continue with this subject. The title is Tinting and Toning with the Plants, lecture Joanna Mayes. And then I'm really curious about today, and then I think you guys too. So tinting and toning actually, color film, before 50s, actually, if you want to have a color on film, it can be tinting or toning. Tinting is like apply color on the transparent side of the film. Toning is like changing the black metal silver part into converted into color. But this all requires some chemical treatment, especially toning. And that could be some part a little bit toxic. And Joanna's research is very interesting. She used a lot of plane-based or some natural element you can find in your environment and create a way of processing or applying color, or I think there are many research she's doing. And actually, you know, film is like a time-based medium, and it's also often responding to time and space. And it's a light sensitive material. And I feel Joanna has a perfect way of working this medium in relate to the location. And then I really like her description. So I'm going to read her description. So Joanna Mayes is a film artist who explores the experience of being in a location at a particular time to the medium of film. She represents place through a layering of approaches to materiality. Analog film responds to the light in that place and time. Physical outcomes are often charged with atmosphere from the site through use of materials of the locality, such as using the seawater for processing and lichen and berries for tinting the film. So that's like an amazing lecture I would like to see. So for the other participants, you are all mute now. I hope you are mute now. And any moment you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat. but we will not, to be able not to interrupt the lecture, all the question will be answered in the end of the lecture. And then this lecture is recorded now, and you can watch it back later in our Vimeo channel. So that's all to be said, I think. So now I give the stage to Joanna. I will mute myself, turn off my camera, and then let's enjoy the lecture.
Lovely. Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here. And yeah, one of the benefits of the strange times we find ourselves in is this wonderful online community. So thank you for inviting me. I'm just going to share my screen and let's get going. So I'm just going to, okay. So yeah, my name is Joanna Mayes and I live in the UK in the furthest west. In fact, there's a bit, it's kind of further south, southwest of the UK, and it's called Cornwall, where I live. And it's very beautiful. Lots of lovely outdoor spaces to be in, like many of us. And I'm going to be talking about colouring film with organic materials. So this is me out with my Bolex. This is on the Isles of Scilly, which are just off the end of Cornwall. A wonderful place to film. And this is my hometown, St Ives. As you can see, if you just go along the coast path, we're quite a busy little town, but if you go along the coast path, you get lots of wonderful plants to play with. So my interest is in paying attention to a place, noticing materials at a site, their life cycle, and also the history of human use, the stories of that place. I then turn home to research ideas, looking for clues, listening and learning about what others are doing in both film and textile processing and dyeing, and hunting for ways in which to develop the relationship of my film to the site in which I'm working. And I also enjoy paying attention to materials. Filming helps me with an understanding of place through sight, through the specifics of particular places, imagining ways of bringing the site into the film artifact itself, and spending time with materials and substances. What can we learn from materials by spending time with them? So I like to think about film as an artifact. I moved into working with analog film as I became interested in it as a document of time spent in a place. A piece of film is a physical document of light at a time and a place and the photochemical relationships at that moment. Myself in that place and the camera as an extension of that. The camera and its personality as mediator and participant. By using other materials within processing from the site being filmed, I'm attempting to re-index a part of the relationship of the artwork to that place and time, whilst understanding that, of course, this can never be achieved. Foraging has become more important to me, especially during lockdown. In the UK, we were having one walk a day, and so it's important to make the most of that time. And I like to go swimming, again, very lucky living by the sea. And on the way back, I'd see the plants and I might be filming, and I started to think about what more I could do with those plants. So yeah, foraging, going from place to place, searching for things that we can eat or use. So these are the kind of things that I started coming across. We look on the bottom right, that's quite an important type of lichen, which has historically been used for dyeing. And if you look at the top right, you can see how lichen, I mean, is an amazing substance, which I'll probably mention later a bit more, but it's partly fungal, and it has, there are many different types, just so many, the variety is incredible. But it is tricky trying not to, for example, that one bottom right, there's not actually that much of it there. And the rule of thumb is don't take more than 10%, and I probably wouldn't even take 10% of that, to be honest. I just take a very little for a test. So top left, once I started wondering about what I was going to do about this, I noticed that if there'd been wind and then rain, that you would get lichen that had been knocked off the roofs and sent down the drain pipe onto the ground. So I started collecting them, looking a bit mad, I think, but and kitchen processing has always been important to me. This is a reflection of my life and my family. My daughter's now 12, but when I had a new baby, I became particularly aware of the damage of chemicals and chemical in the air, and that their skin is so porous. So it just makes you particularly aware. And of course, once you've had this awareness, it's hard to go back. I've been working on this idea. I've been thinking about what it is actually that I'm doing. And I got interested in this idea of full circle. So tree mallow on the right there grows along on the island along our coast path, and the stems naturally fall off. So in relation to some other work I'll talk about later, I started getting interested in tree mallow, and so I collected those stems and found that I could process with them, which I think you've had some talk about that last month, and I think there'll be more talk about that with other people as well. But so I used the film tinting actually came first when I was working with Caffenol. So during lockdown, I started looking at the types of materials that were left over from tinting and started using those as alternative developers. And so you can see there, we've got a lichen developer and then tinted with elderberry. And then, I don't know how it was for other countries, but getting rid of your waste became more difficult as well during lockdown. And I started, obviously that's really important anyway, and at the moment when he's considering new approaches to how we're living on the planet. But the tree, so I was thinking, okay, what can I do with all this stuff? So seaweed, which was one of the things I was processing with, put that on my garden, that's quite good. But the tree mallow, I thought, what can I do with it? And somehow, I don't know, I just started thinking about making paper. I thought, what can you do? Seaweed, I'd heard of seaweed paper. So I had a go at that, and that was really fun. So this winter, I'm planning to do some more paper making. And then I thought, what can I do with the paper? How does that relate back to what I've already been working on? And I used it as projection paper. So this is seaweed projection paper, which I really enjoyed. Again, lots more work to do on that. So my story with film tinting. So this is about looking for colour. So why wouldn't I just use normal film tint materials, apart from the fact that I couldn't get them during lockdown? But I wouldn't want to use them anyway, because they're toxic and really not good for the environment at all. There are quite a lot of research papers. If you start looking on the internet, you'll see that there's quite a lot of interest in finding ways to replace current dyes with organic ones. And in this country, it's about a kind of an ecological perspective and trying to kind of use local and it's a kind of whole follow through of using, local wool and local everything. But in the Indian subcontinent, they have an actual current, very obvious problem with the amount of chemical dyes going as effluent into their water systems, and they don't have terribly good regulation either. There was one story I was reading about local dogs, I think in Bangladesh, suddenly coming out, getting blue, from indigo dyes. So that's not the natural indigo ones. It's the kind of cloned indigo ones, which was dealt with. But it just shows the kind of situation you can end up with. And this other quote I came across was when I was actually researching spirulina, which I'll mention later, but is used as a natural blue dye. And this research came up where they're talking about how, in fact, its textile effluents are causing a problem for spirulina. And it's the dyes that are killing off the spirulina. So really interesting connections there. So yeah, it says you lose nutrients, and also it's well known that it creates a film on the water's surface, so due to lack of sunlight, aquatic life suffers. So there are also positive reasons to use organic dyes. It works hand in hand with my wish to bring as much of the site into the materiality of the film artifact, using materials such as berries and lichen from the site to enhance the relationship of the film to its subject. This returns me to Hamish Fulton's take only photographs, leave only footprints. That's about right, is it? Something like that. I didn't look it up. If the washing of my film, like the washing of textiles, creates damage to the environment I'm enjoying and documenting, then I'm not thinking hard enough about the circular nature of the filmmaking process. I became interested in working with more organic materials during the process of developing workshops and artist in residence activities at my local libraries. And I realised that, of course, if I use cathinol and I wasn't using plant-based developers at the time, but plant-based tints, then I can actually take them into Cornwall libraries who are the same as schools. I heard recently around here that schools had stopped developing and universities stopped developing, obviously outside of the darkroom, due to health and safety issues. So it's a really important thought that we can actually go in as practitioners into these community spaces and actually work there live, and people can see what we do and open up our process a bit, which has been great. So my central tenets are that they not be harmful to the environment, that they're sustainable, and ideally from or local to the filming site. Although my research has led to use of more general vegetable dyes to try to understand the science behind the process. And of course, it needs to work on analog film. So I found out pretty quickly, as has already been mentioned, that toning requires chemistry, which I've been unable to replicate with non-hazardous materials. I have been trying something. I'm working in a local mine at the moment, which does have iron and tin and a bit of copper and things. So I was kind of interested in whether there's some way I can use some of those materials, but my all got very complicated. And once I started looking into it, turning the iron into anything that could be used that's a bit nasty for photochemistry involved things that in Victorian times they thought were right for, but were a bit hazardous for even just as the processes themselves. So I'm leaving that for now. So I've focused my research on tinting. So traditional dyes, I kind of see it as finding a new lineage. The two key organic dye types. So I looked at the history of material dyeing, and they categorize it by the type of material that's to be dyed. So you have protein dyes, which are wool, silk, animal-based, and cellulose, which is cotton and linen, those types of things. And then we also have another dye type, which came later, which of course is man-made materials, which, as you can see, has polyester in there, which is relevant to what we're talking about. So I like that these materials can be part of the stories of a place. Well, of course they are, materials are, but we can use some of those in our work. These are beautiful pictures from Shetland, I think, certainly Scotland, I think it's Shetland, showing the traditional dyeing with what was known as crottle, which is the yellow dye on the right. I think that's, oh, no, I was going to say, I don't think it is. I was going to say Parmelia saxitalis, but I don't think it is. So, yeah, this was a very important part of the economy, and people would get paid by weight for lichen. This particular lichen on the right, was used for purple dye, which was an incredibly valuable dye. And we can find it on granite. I know there's a strong record of it on Dartmoor, which is in Devon, near Cornwall. And I haven't seen research about it in Cornwall, but yeah, I'm pretty certain that would have gone on here as well. But even then, there is a risk with organic dyes where they're actually out foraged this particular lichen, and so even though it does grow quite well, it was so valuable that it got overused, and that's something we have to be particularly aware of as well. So dye and film emulsion. So I started using traditional strong organic dyes such as madder, and I chose some that were grown by smallholders. Now mordants, I'll go into it a little bit more later, but I tried wool mordants first. That's what you use to prepare the material so that the dye will stick. I tried wool mordants first because, being animal derived, wool is animal derived like film is film emulsion. So I felt the dye needs to be strong to work on film. A general rule of thumb is if a dye stuff doesn't stay in your fingers, then it's not strong enough, which doesn't apply to lichen. It seems to apply to everything else that I've found. Is that true, actually? I guess thinking of some things like avocado skins, they don't dye. That's a good example of one that doesn't fit with that, but mainly that's the case. So, and I prefer not to use insect-based dyes, like cochineal and black. Just, it's all to do with amounts, isn't it, of use and how you make use of things. It seems a bit unnecessary to me. And then fixing salt and vinegar as suggested, and I'm still testing that. Whizzing past. Okay, let's see if we can get this running. So this is my original dye experiment using madder. And this was quite a while ago. It was at the library. And I had no idea how complex trying to tint with organic materials can be. And I got very lucky. I just used madder, which I think I'd heard worked, but I'm not even sure I had heard it. I just knew it was a very strong dye. And it came out reasonably well. And at the time, I was surprised that it wasn't brighter, but now I'm surprised it's so bright. It is tricky to get a good strong dye with organic materials. So let's move into something a little more technical now. Put your fingers in your ears if you're not so interested in technical stuff. I tried to keep a balance with it. So tinting and toning. I'm sure most of you here know what they are, but just in case. Film tinting is the process of adding colour to black and white film, usually by means of soaking the film in dye and staining the film emulsion. The effect is that all of the light shining through is filtered so that what would be white light becomes light of some colour. Film toning is the process of replacing the silver particles in the emulsion with coloured silver salts by means of chemicals. Unlike tinting, toning coloured the darkest areas, leaving the white areas largely untouched. So, aniline dyes. These are really important in the story of tinting film, and it's worth having really thought about them at this point. I first came across them because I was doing a film project to do with a man called William Murdoch, who was the inventor of the first coal-based I've forgotten what was that? Anyway, it's to do with it was electricity. Yeah, it's the first light, and it was produced by coal, which is funny because Cornwall doesn't have any coal, but they had imported it for to power the beam engines, which were used for the mining here, in order to bring the water up so you could mine more deeply. And he was originally from Scotland, so he had an interest in coal anyway from his family. And he was an inventor and carried on inventing things, and one of them was the original aniline dye technology, which was in 1791, and this is a byproduct from the coal industry. It took until 1856 for it to be turned into a commercial dye by Perkin. But of course, that predates the first flexible photographic roll film sold by Eastman in 1885. So they didn't have any need to experiment with other dyes. So it's not like we're reclaiming a history of organic tinting for film, because it didn't happen, not that I'm aware of anyway. So they started off using aniline dyes. Annabelle's Serpentine Dance is a short, silent American film hand-tinted with aniline dyes, produced and distributed by Edison Manufacturing Company in 1895. And there are various versions of these dances. I'm just going to show you, you're probably familiar with them, but I hadn't been actually. The one I'd been more aware of was Trip to the Moon, but it's so beautiful, and I think it shows what can be achieved through this beautiful original version where they painted rather than soaked. So I'm just going to switch my share and stop my share, start again. See if I can find it here.
So let's say you have to read an
Oh dear, no dear, it's trying to give me it's giving
incredibly long email from.
Let's how am I going to manage that? I can't really, can I? I'm just going to end up getting an advert, someone. And, well, go and have a look at it for yourselves. We'll do that rather than have to watch an advert before we do. If you just do a search on YouTube, you will find. I've got to find my PowerPoint. You'll find it, and it's really beautiful. So. It's an enjoyable thing, I have to say. Here's a still from it anyway. And what I find fascinating as well is if you look on YouTube, you'll see that these different versions, some of them have degraded a bit over time. I haven't really looked into how much aniline dyes do perish, but I'm sure they do, and that they have even those types of dyes need to be restored to get the full impact of their original colour. And this is actually held in the Library of Congress. But there was a whole kind of parallel art to filmmaking, which was the colouring. And again, I'm sure you know, they had these huge, almost factories of people, I think often women, painting the film to get colour on them. And Barbara Flekiger, she ran this very well-known tinting or painting, I don't know, the colorizing studio. And The Trip to the Moon is wonderful. And there is a recently restored version, which the BFI did, which, yeah, the colours are just fantastic, and very, very creative. And I think, you know, we've got so used to colour that I think maybe they were just much more aware of its impact. So I see the keys to thinking about tinting film as being thinking about the constituents of the film that you're working with, because obviously this is a technical process, even if it can be done in a more fluid kind of way. So the emulsion is central to this. You can't tint the silver, as we've discussed. So I've focused on the gelatin part of the emulsion and looked at it as being protein animal-based. It's not as simple as that. And Esther and I have been having an email conversation about what else is in emulsion, which may be getting in the way of being able to treat it in the same way as wool and silk. I've certainly found the game I'm playing, sometimes again, this, I'm sure lab people identify with this, but I just end up getting so interested in trying to do a particular thing that I can spend so much time. I've been doing that with reversal processing and processing with different types of plants, and so I always seem to have something on the go. But with, yeah, in order to, there are certain things that are simple to tint with, such as berries. They work beautifully. But I really wanted to use some of the more subtle colours, and just because of the approach I'm taking to my filmmaking at the moment, or this particular project, if you like, I really wanted to be able to get colour from a wider range of plants, and I can, and I could dye cloth beautifully with it, but I'm not managing so well with the emulsion, and it may well be to do with the other things involved in it. But I'm enjoying the process, and I'm going to carry on. So it does, it is more down to chemistry now. It's kind of got, you know, I know which plants ought to work, but I'm having trouble getting it to actually get into the emulsion. So the other approach that could be taken is the film base, and which is now mainly polyester. And again, that hasn't really been considered much for organic dyes. Again, people are kind of going natural. But again, in India, they are very concerned about it because they are continuing to produce man-made materials, but they don't want to have the terrible pollution that comes with it. So there is work being done on that, which is great, and I've been trying to follow their research, which I'll mention a bit later. So film dyeing basics. I researched traditional protein dyeing methods, and these are kind of basic tests that I have done and I do. So the standard wool dye method for extracting dye is that you boil the material for an hour. Now, if you were dyeing wool, you would then put, or one of the ways is you put the wool in to what's known as the dye bath. Yeah, I should have sent the dye bath really. So in with the dye bath, and then you would continue to simmer it. There is a thing that's quite interesting with Andre from Curioso Lab. He was talking about when you're getting phenols from out of plants, that he was talking about overboiling, which actually you lose some phenols, but it increases tint. So my ears pricked up. I was like, oh, that's interesting for tinting, which is, and it's interesting that this is the way that traditional dyeing is done. You boil it for an hour. But once you have that dye and you are, especially with certain types of organic dyes, that you then only want to simmer rather than boil with the materials, so that you don't, quite often they can turn on to brown, they go from red to brown. And if you start playing this game, you will find that brown is the easiest thing to get. Brown and yellow are not, or kind of muddy yellow, not so hard. It's the brighter, more interesting colours that are trickier. Yeah, it's so annoying. I keep getting these beautiful green, what looks like beautiful green dye bars, and they do nothing to film. So there you go. Anyway, so my method, which is kind of seems to be the standard of people who have been doing organic film dyeing, is that you take it as hot as you can. So don't take it over 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So what I do is I allow it to cool to 40, and then my initial test is I actually put the strip in with the dye material. So I leave the nettles in there, or the berries, and that's called a contact dye method, which is used in wool. That's one of the ways they do it, which tends to be stronger. So I thought that would be a good idea. I check it after an hour, and maybe take a picture to see what it's like, and then I leave it overnight. So my second version of a test is to do the same string material, and that's another version you can do. Mordanting, which I still haven't quite got into yet, but trying to mordant first, or at the same time with an appropriate mordant, that maybe can help it stick, which is alum, and rhubarb leaves are also a more natural replacement for alum. Although I believe that you have to be a bit careful with rhubarb leaves because they've got a rather toxic acid in them. And the alum that I use are the one used in food production, which is very low toxicity, although it does still have something to do with aluminium, but it's not the same as the aluminium mordants that used to be used. I haven't found it made much difference. So I'm going to be really interested to talk to some chemists about this and just kind of try and understand that a bit more. I think there's some more work that can be done with mordants. So more recently, I've taken one of Andre's approaches, as I mentioned, for plant phenol extraction. So the other thing that he does to try and get more out of the plants is to leave the dye stuff to sit for days or even weeks prior to dyeing. So I've tried that, and I was very pleased. Avocado skins hardly did anything when I first tried it by my original method that I mentioned, having left them for a couple of weeks. And that's beetroot I've been having sitting for a couple of weeks, and it got some really quite interesting mold going on it. But Andres was like, when it comes to phenols, not to worry. And in fact, once things start to ferment, or that actually can strengthen its effectiveness in different ways. So I'm kind of just like letting things do their thing and seeing what effect it has. But we have got the odd fruit fly. I've got to be interested in the beetroot. So yeah, there are various little pots of stuff all sitting outside our back door. But I was very pleased. I took this out this morning and it's got a lovely orange. But again, one has to think, this is all tests, so it's the practicality, isn't it, of how much you're going to want to do. And one way in which I've dealt with that is actually using the same. So there's a thing in traditional dyeing where you can reuse the same dye bath. I think kind of up to 3 times. So you can imagine you could have lengths which then you do one, then next. And what's nice about this particular method is you're not having to soak the film for ages. You're just soaking the original material. So that, I think that's a good tip. So mordants. Mordants are used to prepare materials so the dye can bond. And it is to do with strength, durability, and light fastness. It has, I've come across somebody saying that, so beetroot and blackberries do tend to be used as quick and easy organic tints, but apparently, certainly with cloth, they are highly fugitive dyes. So again, more work. It'd be interesting to see how those work. I actually have got some blackberry tinted material that has been sitting around for a while. I should go and have a look at it, because apparently even in the dark, they can disappear really quite fast. Someone was saying about if you are knitting a wool, so using wool, and you dye the wool with beetroot, that it may well have changed colour by the time you've knitted the jumper. And in my case, I'm the slowest knitter in the world. I put it away and then don't come back for years. So yeah, it's certainly a consideration. Although, as creative practitioners, I got quite excited by that idea of fugitive dyes. So I'm considering actually trying to find highly fugitive ones, or how it is that you can get it to disappear quickly. I think that could make for a really interesting piece of work. So in protein dyeing, different mordants are used to create different effects or to support different types of dyes. There's lots of research out there, so many websites about dyeing methods, so you can find all that out pretty easily. But one of the main culprits in water pollution is the original mordants, as heavy metals are used routinely as mordants for cloth. Research suggests that in early film tinting, a light acid was used to help fix the film and create a chemical bond, which is interesting because vinegar is widely used as a dye fixative. But a word of caution with vinegar is that it can change the pH and therefore the colour of certain organic materials. So that's something to be aware of. Modifiers, that's the other key thing used in traditional dyeing. And this is where chemistry is used to change the colour of dyes by altering the pH. So the rule of thumb is that alkaline saddens colours, acid brightens. An excellent example, I hope that's right, by the way, you can double check. An excellent example of this can be found with red cabbage tinting. So you add vinegar or lemon juice, turns the purple into blue and green, and baking soda heads pinkwards. Really great for workshops. And as I was implying, it's all about the chemistry. There's a huge amount of material about the nature and methods of organic textile dyes. What's tricky is to find ways to transfer this to film. It's the combination of the dye and the material to be dyed that matters, and interaction between the two. Bonding is key. It's also worth noting here that many organic dyes are likely to be fugitive, as I mentioned, and change over time or fade. So you've got direct vegetable tinting, which is where I kind of started off. Very beautiful colours. And just recently, because I've been getting a bit frustrated with this research process where I'm not really quite understanding what's going on, why certain things work and others don't. And I've got an early bird, I'm sure that's familiar. Lenny Lipton, independent filmmaking. Can't see if you can see that. Yes, there we are. Lovely Lenny Lipton. Very lucky to have a copy of that. I was given it by James from Aaron Films. Thank you, James. And forward there one sec, sorry. And he mentioned that vegetable dyes are his favourite, and he was talking about that you could get them in the 70s in bakery suppliers, and so I thought I'd have a look at that. And this is UK, so actually I was recommended Waitrose, and we don't have a Waitrose really near here. So I was wondering what to do about that. And I happened to be in Tesco's and saw these, and actually these are based on natural dyes. So I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at that. So I tinted the film overnight. I didn't mordant and I didn't heat. Just to see what happened. And the blue is based on spirulina. Red is paprika extract. Green is spirulina as curcumin, which is the ingredient from turmeric, and yellow is curcumin. So my results were that blue didn't work at all. I mean, not at all. It just slid straight off. I just did another test to see whether there's anything I could do differently. I think I warmed up the film first, because there is a thing that if you don't warm film up, that it kind of doesn't open up the emulsion. Although I read this paper from I think 1908 or 1912, where it's saying don't heat up your film because it opens up the emulsion. So and that it can make it brittle. But I think that probably was the older types of film stocks, because I've not heard anyone say that. I haven't experienced it myself. So 40 degrees is about as far as I can go. Yeah, so yeah, blue didn't work. Green was very pale, yellow was brilliant, and the red was wonderful. You can see it there. The next thing I was trying was mixing things together. Could I add a bit of, would the spirulina work if it was with something much stronger? But it does seem that the spirulina just doesn't work in the way the others do. So if there's anyone on the call who can tell me any more about this, I'd love to know. So elderberry tinting. In fact, you can see on the left there what happens if you overheat your film. I got a bit overexcited and let that simmer a bit. But yeah, if you leave it overnight, and I use vinegar in this case to set the tint, it wasn't very strong when projected. And this is another issue we have with these types of dyes, that you do need a good contrasty image and punchy dye to actually be good for live projection. But I expect a lot of people like myself where we do telecine, and in the case of the fugitive nature of things, it's nice to get them telecine. So yeah, and I enjoy my little film clip tests as well as images. So there may well be something I'm going to do with them. So this is lovely blackberry, gorgeous colour. So I have a little film telecine film clip here, just to give you an idea of what it would look like. And this is negative. So that's one of the reasons I was getting so obsessed with eco-friendly reversal, so that I could tint onto reversed film. Because obviously, if you then print this or telecine it and make it positive, it's going to change colour. So it was rather beautiful. So the blackberries. So to lichen. I love lichen. They're really fun to look for, and And I'm just fascinated by how they work and how it works for tinting. It's very strong history within dye, and the relationship of the colour, you know, of the lichen to the colour of the tint is just so interesting, and the lack of relationship. Yeah, it's so interesting. So I live right by the sea, but I also work on the moors, and you do have more different types of lichen, also woods, obviously, with the best place to get lichen. In fact, I haven't mentioned it anywhere else, but really the ideal way to collect lichen is you wait for a storm, you go into a wood after the storm, and you pick up fallen branches. And again, Curioso Lab's interesting point was about how apparently you get more phenols from certainly lichen, he was saying. I think there's some research about it, but lichen that is more exposed to sunlight. So the higher up, the lichens that get higher up in a more exposed way are more likely to be ones with high phenolic content, and phenols can support tinting. Or they seem to be the same ones. There's a whole relationship between kind of a strength of plant and its ability to process and also to tint. And interesting, this lichen on the left here looks very similar to another lichen. This lichen does a wonderful tint. It's really great for processing as well. It's been another lichen that actually kind of grows, maybe it grows more in the shade. Rubbish, it's no good to it. In fact, lots of that around here. Processes well, but not much use for tinting. It's pretty shame. I think this is the one that doesn't. Might be the one that does. I'm going to be testing these, but that's a fallen twig. So you're not harming. You're not harming in that way. So yeah, Joanna Mayes getting snow lichen. So you have identification from both directions, that you can find a lichen like this that's dropped off, identify it and test it, and then find which works and whether they, you can find which lichens are good for dyeing and whether you can find them locally. But even then, local variation can mean that no dye will be present. Mentioned the history of purple dye and lichen. So you have two key approaches to extraction of dye from lichen. You have maceration in sterile urine, which then brings out an ammonia type substance, or you can use commercial ammonia, or there's the boiling method where you put it with water and boil. Recent research experience has led me to carrying out more testing to identify lichen variants, and this is called CK testing. I thought I just started talking about lichen food, so I thought I really ought to put this note, and please everyone, I expect you're already aware of it, but please be extremely careful about collecting lichen, as some are rare and slow growing, really slow growing. I mean, they can be used to date settlements, and they really can be very slow growing. Only take where it's plentiful, and only take enough to make a test first, because it's very easy to identify them manually as well. Then never take more than 10% and collect when you do from different sites or different collections, so you're not taking more from one tree. Or learn about lichen and get local advice before making use of them. So, yeah, the really interesting thing about lichen is that it's very light, fast, and strong as a dye. And it's important for foam tinting because it doesn't require mordant, it will dye directly. because there is this issue of whether you can really modern film at all, which is maybe why it's so tricky to do. So, ooh, I think I've put the same thing in there twice. Okay. Okay, so lichen testing and dyes. So this is where we're getting even more technical, everybody, but it's pretty simple. So sea testing is you use a drop of Milton. I don't know if Milton is an international brand, but it's basically household bleach. But look for calcium hypochlorite. And if it's C positive, if you see it written, it just uses a plus, then it will appear as red or purple. It may happen very fast, but and go away very fast. It's really a beautiful thing to watch. And that means it's suitable for what's called AM dye, which is ammonia based. And also purple POD, which is where you, so the whole thing with the ammonia dyeing is you get the stuff, you stick it in with some ammonia or stale urine, it's got to be stale. And then you do a kind of load of, again, you have to look this up, but you do a load of kind of mixing because it needs to mix with air. And then it will eventually turn into this special type of dye. And then if you dye the material with it and then put it out in sunlight, that's how you get the purple. I haven't managed it yet. I'm going to. But first you have to find the right lichen. Then it has to be sustainable, which is, I found it, but I haven't found enough of it to make it really useful. And then we do the practice. So K testing, you use a drop of lye or drain cleaner. I use 10% caustic soda to 90% water, which that's your good enough version for home people. And if it's positive, it goes orange or yellow, and that means it's suitable for BMW dye, which is brown. There is another type of acid that you can identify by doing what's called KC. So you put the caustic soda and then the melting, and that identifies another group. Yeah, I've got the references later, but Cassaman is very helpful on all this, if you can get hold of one. So there we are. So here's an example. Move away from the technique. So this is a type of lichen I found on a walk to a local granite tour, and I found that it was K positive, so it should be suitable for BMW bar method. Again, it wasn't very much of it there, so reasonable amount, probably enough to do a small amount of tinting. So you can see there, that's what happens once you do it. I've got this little orange kind of glow. Another example, so we made a special trip. So in my book, one of my books is every book. This is a kind of seminal dyeing book, the dyer's manual. If you're lucky, you might find it in a local library, or a friend might have one. When I was trying to get hold of one, they're like hen's teeth. So, and yeah, so keep your eyes peeled for that, because it's a lovely old book. Anyway, so I made this special trip. I'd spoken to some people we work with, who are the local Landscape Partnership and the local Wildlife Trust, and someone was like, oh yeah, there's definitely some reindeer lichen out on this particular spot. And we had to do a little bit of kind of going at a time that wouldn't annoy the people who kind of work near there. And so really fun. I mean, that's part of it. Isn't it fun to go out and do this stuff? So I found it, and it looked like it ought to be the right stuff. The book said that it's in Cornwall. My friends thought it was right, but when I tested it, it didn't respond. So it must be a slightly different variant. There's another way you can test for certain types of lichen by using a UV torch, which is kind of fun. And it didn't work for that either, but I'm going to be out with my UV torch checking some. So my sideways approach, once I started having some difficulties with actually getting the emulsion to work with these, with other, anything slightly more interesting, I thought I'd have a look at whether you can dye the polyester film base. And when I was making my research, I noticed that actually originally coloured film base was one approach to film tinting. So obviously, I'm sure lots of you have already experienced this with hand processes where you get this when you're cross-processing colour as black and white, you're using caffeinol on colour, you get the orange anti-halogenic layer. That has a similar effect. Also, I've been hand processing Kodachrome, and you can get this orange or green negative. So I've been looking at research materials for organic dyes, and I'm talking to my local university, one of my local universities, Exeter University, and they have a future focus project about, and I've been talking to them about collaborating with eco dyeing initiatives and use of locally plant dye materials. So henna, I was so excited. I found a research paper where they tested henna and it didn't work. I was so excited about it. And I nearly managed to flambe the kitchen because they were talking, this particular paper was talking about using alcohol. I was using isopropyl alcohol for extracting the henna dye first. And I thought maybe that would make all the difference. And then it did a kind of flambe. Luckily I had a wet tea towel nearby. And in fact, other papers didn't talk about using alcohol at all, but that is another acknowledged way of getting stronger phenols out from plants. So I thought I'd give it a go, but didn't really work. But I'm sure that there's more to do with this, so excited about that. So my plans. So I'm continuing to test henna, and I'm continuing to test lichen. Mordants, what difference do these make? And the use of modifiers or mixes of things I do know yet to create different colours. I'm talking to chemists, and I want to learn more about the bonding of dyes with emulsion and polyester base. And I'm continuing to work with my local wildlife trusts and ecologists in identifying and caring for lichen, as we can be part of the solution and not part of the problem. Here are my references for this talk. Wonderful website, filmcolours.org. So much I'm looking forward to. Once the rain starts, I'm going to be sitting and reading that. And Brian Pritchard is amazing, and his website, brianpritchard.com, really interesting on all this. My source books for dyeing, I'm going to show you the dyer's manual. And this, I love this book. It's a very old book, and it actually was printed in the States, but I got hold of it on Amazon recently. So maybe there's some remaindered ones hanging around, I don't know. But I found it really, really interesting, really useful. And I'm going to be getting I'm joining the British Lichen Society, and I'm going to be getting I need a better identification manual. I didn't realise I was going to be getting into it quite so deeply, or that it was going to be quite so tricky to identify the ones that I want. So yeah, so that's the lichen dyeing. Jill Goodwin about dyeing. There are lots of wonderful books. I'm really enjoying Bunchy Casey's book. Natural Dye Colours from Shetland, which is all about wonderful site-specific dyeing and her approaches. And I really enjoyed, they have, she uses seeds, which I got very excited about dock seeds because we've got loads of them here and they're around at this time of year and they make a lovely colour, but it didn't work on film at all. So, who knows? So British Lichen Society, I'm sure there are lichen societies where you live, and the Field Studies Council, they produce these amazing guides, which I and my lichen hunting friends use. They're really, really good, but not comprehensive, obviously. So, oh, I think oops, I was just going to do a last little. There we go. So that's my contact details, and please do get in touch, especially if you're keen on a lichen. That's me. So if you've got any experience to share or any little questions or
Thank you.
fun thoughts, great to hear them.
Thanks for sharing your research. And now it's time, if you have any questions or some part is not clear enough, feel free to type in the chat and then I will help to go through. Let me see. Oh, yeah. See. I haven't seen any question yet.
Good.
Maybe I read a bit slow.
Oh, I think if you play the clip for 2 more seconds, you can skip the ad. Yeah, do we all want
okay.
okay, we can have a vote. If people want to see it, I'll load it up at the end if we haven't got questions.
So there is a question here. Could you say more on what you mean technically about using vinegar to set the tint? How long in a bath? What concentration? So it's about fixing, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think I have a direct answer for that. I think I just splosh some in. Probably if I was doing it now, I wouldn't, but when I was doing it, I just kind of splashed a bit in. If you look online, you can see what amounts people use for wool, and but actually, I think I've kind of moved past that a bit, really, because they tend to use mordanting rather than kind of a fix at the end. It's about the preparation rather than, you know, popping stuff in the end. But yeah, they don't really tend to use it. So, and also you do have this issue of it changes the pH. So, but this was very recent. In fact, it was kind of last couple of days when I was reading that they used to use an acid to help to fix the film. So I think I'm going to be having another little go at that. But I've been too busy trying to get the colours on in the first place.
And from Kirsten, where do you, or maybe, sorry, I've skipped one. Okay, thank you so much for this presentation. And could you say more about the UV torch to test the lichen?
Yeah, UV torch. It's really fun, isn't it? I don't know masses about it. I've got, who is it? Actually, it's the British Lichen Society. If you go to the British Lichen Society, and they have online, and they talk about it a lot there, and interestingly, this particular, oh, I've got it here. I was going to show you. It's lichen here. This is reindeer lichen, and it's called reindeer lichen because the reindeer eat it. And also, apparently, you can use it for. It's amazing. It's got antibacterial properties. So. For any of you who live out that way, you know, if you hurt yourself and you packed an injury with it, this is amazing. Whether I'm going to try it or not is another question. One of the things you do, actually, I don't even know if I mentioned it, is that you soak you do soak the material first. Soak material for 24 hours or even overnight is a really good idea before you try to get dye out. But this, I soaked it and it really stank. I don't know why. It's what was on it. I have no idea. They don't normally, but this one did. It's all right now, it's dried out. But it grows in kind of clumps, like, so cool. So, okay, what was the question? Oh yes, UV. So this is supposed to be kind of gold standard for UV. So reindeer lichen or Cladonia portentosa is supposed to work really well with UV light, and you get this really strong reaction. So they are saying, have something like this with you so that you can see what it's supposed to be like, but it's not really doing very much. So don't know really. I'm still learning, but it's another thing to take out with you when you're, or, you know, to try on your lichen to see whether you can get any kind of reaction. Fun.
And there's another question here. Where do you find film these days? Do you work with the expired film?
Yeah, I do. And that creates a problem for tinting, because if you want to tint film, expired film tends to be, well, I've been using a lot of Kodachrome. Anybody who knows me knows I'm Kodachrome. I've just gone mad at Kodachrome. I think it's because I've been doing a bit of Super 8 and I was trying to find a way of getting Super 8 to be cheaper. And I like, I think it was Adrian Cousins, who you've got talking next time, haven't you? He was talking about that you've already we've paid the environmental price for old film. So he kind of thinks it's, you know, it's reuse, isn't it? It's wonderful. But Kodachrome, you've already got a colour, you've got green, you've got, so I was actually trying tinting some of these coloured films to see what happened with them. So that's going to be interesting. But of course, Super 8's so tiny. Yay, Adrian and Kodachrome. Yeah, he's really rocking it at the moment.
He will be on our last guest, actually.
Yeah, well, don't get him onto Kodachrome because you'll never hear about the rest of it. No. So you've got, what I'm trying to say, yes, so old film wise, it's tricky to pick up expired black and white. But I guess, you see, people do process old Kodachrome as black and white, and you do get a clear chemistry if you use the standard chemistry. But I'm not using that old chemistry because it's really toxic. I mean, it's super toxic, reversal black and white. So I don't do it. I mean, never say never, but I you know, it's not what I do. And so that, you know, I'm getting these coloured film bases, or if you're cross-processing old colour film, you get the orange base. So it does make it tricky. So sometimes I use something like Orwo in order to be able to do the plant processing and the or Plus X or something. It's tricky. I don't want to on some ways, but if you want to do the processing and the colouring with plants, it's easier. So okay.
And the next question is, have you tried tinting toning the film during the developing process?
Well, you had Ricardo last month, didn't you? Yeah. And it's very interesting. Yeah, you would have thought, wouldn't you, that so I am using the same materials that I think I touched on it. So I use the same materials for tinting as for, so I use the waste from the processing. You could then use that for tinting. I think I haven't quite done that with the lichen. You could do it, but it's interesting that it doesn't stay. So you know that if you're using something that ought to have a tint, the tinting comes from a chemistry. So if you are, so Ricardo, it wasn't Ricardo actually, this was, you know, Andreas, General Tregan, Curioso Lab, him. He was talking about how you don't want to overboil your materials, because otherwise you get more tint. But of course, if you want to tint, that's good. So you can get a yellow tint that way. And in fact, some of his latest work that he's doing about onion reversal and things seems to be getting a green. So there are different ways. I think it's that thing, isn't it? That's wonderful in itself. It's all, you know, natural stuff like vitamin C giving you the yellow. I think what's interesting is how you can have a bit of control, I guess. I haven't tried, I mean, Lenny Lipton talks about painting on, so that's why I was kind of interested in those vegetable food dyes, because you could paint with them. That's quite interesting, isn't it? But you have got that thing of, you know, you have to do a section and then another section and another section. So, but to me, I mean, so that beautiful dance, that is where you see the power of colour in itself. Whereas I guess what I'm doing is working with sight. So I'm just kind of interested in the sight getting to intervene on the film. So it has a slightly different purpose to it, I guess.
There is one more question here. Could you talk more about plant phenol extraction? Do you use alcohol to extract it?
Yeah. So talk to the others about that. Because check out the previous talk, because that's really they're super expert. General Tregan, he runs courses as well, and he's just the meister on that stuff. So the whole relationship of phenols and tinting is, I don't quite understand it. I'm kind of getting that, but so that's what I was saying I was doing with this, trying to use the alcohol to get at the henna, because they were saying use it, and then I did try watering it down, and I tried, you know, boiling it a little bit without, and it flames, and so I'm at the beginning of working out how I would do that, but I don't think it helps much. It doesn't seem to be helping me much. It didn't make any, you know, it still didn't work. So let me know. It works for you.
There is a question here. I'm not sure I understand. It says, who did you say talks about painting on film, please?
Yeah, painting on film is the original thing that they used to do. So if you look at those websites that I mentioned, the I mean, it's all going to be up online, isn't it?
Yeah, it will be online, and it will be on our Vimeo channel. I'm going to post here again. Here.
Len Lipton.
I think, yeah, there are somebody also.
Who means then it's Lenny Lipton, who my book is by. Is that, am I the she being referred to? Yeah. I don't think he talks. Did he talk about? Yeah, he probably does talk about it. He was talking about kind of painting with the food colorings. I think that's him. But the original painting is the original methodology that they used to use where you didn't soak the whole thing, you just painted on. But those lovely websites have got lots about it and other places to look.
Yeah. So everyone, also this the one of the goal of this project is also like after this lecture, some of our Filmware Plus member will continue the research, and you are also the one going to continue the research, and we hope to share more research with each other somewhere, and then we can continue explore the possibility of working with plants into filmmaking. And if you have anything you want to share with us, or you can get directly contact with Joanna, and or you can also email us to share us with your result. Share with us with your results. Yeah. And if we have more results, it will be also shared online. And for the moment, we will just upload all the lectures online. The previous ones already on our Vimeo channel, and the one from today, I will upload it hopefully today. So you will be informed, and save the date. Next one, I think I'm going to, just a second, I'm going to put
It's going to be good. Gotta
so
come.
next one, we still have more to go. Next one in October, 16 October, Saturday. So it's back to the 1 hour later. So for the Dutch time will be 4 to 6. I don't know, I forgot the other time, but you will find out. So it's the title is a primary to capture an image with the light. So lecturer is Mark Osterman. And for a lot of you probably already know, he's a former historian at George Eastman Museum, and he is like an expert of historical photographic process, just a dictionary about a lot of things you want to know. And his lecture will be a lot of mislink, like some research was not continuing, or just it could be a really great inspiration for artist development. So that will be next month. Yeah. So thanks, Joanna. It's really inspiring, and I think we all feel really inspired, and then hope we all continue this research and then share with each other. Yeah. So I think there's another, okay, compliments. Lovely presentation. Thank you, thank you. So thanks everyone, and then I will now save the chat, and then I'll upload the video soon. So thank you, and you can slowly leaving the room. Bye bye. Thank you.
So good.